Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group 7. The member is me, Indriana, and then Dika Listari. Want to present material about cross-cultural understanding. The subject is first, language identity and intercultural communication, and then second, why study intercultural communication. And the first material will be presented by me. Identity. Identity is a difficult term to define since it is rich with contradictory meanings and implicatures both in its ordinary sense and in academic discourse. The paradoxical nature of the term is well demonstrated in current thesis attempts to define as a unitary yet contradictory concept. For her, identities are best thought of as stable features of person that exist prior to any particular situation and are dynamic and situated accomplishments enacted through thought changing from one occasion to the next. Similarly, identities are social categories and are personal and unique. These four types of identity proposed by Tracy 2002 differ from each other on two dimensions: stable versus situated and social versus personal. And the fourth, master identities refers to those aspects of personhood. Uh, Example, gender, ethnic, a nationality, which are relatively stable and do not change from situation to situation. And the second, interactional identities refer to specific institutional rules people in a communicative context. A person can be a college student, a volunteer for Oxfam, and passengers and a mother. Okay, and the third, relational identities refers to interpersonal relationships such as power difference or social distance people between people involved involved in a given situation. They are negotiable and context specific. For example, in an appraisal meeting, there is power difference between a manager and an employer whose related performance is assessed. If they meet in a live, however, the power difference is less an issue. And for personal identities refer to personality, attitudes, and character which are relatively stable and unique. And five, discourse identities are those that people assume and project the various sequentially organized activities. Next, cultural identity. Cultural identity is very often described as a collection of multiple identities consisting of predominantly ethnic identities along with other interesting identities such as race, nationality, gender, class, and religious affiliation. One possible take on the relationship between cultural identity and other types of identities can be found in Orbe and Harris 2001, who took a more dynamic view of the multifaceted nature of cultural identity. They proposed that while race and ethnic are a part of cultural identity, other variables such as abilities, age, gender, nationality, sexual orientation, spirituality, and socioeconomic status interact with these too and act as cultural identity markers. Some markers can become more silent and intense than others in the process of communication. Okay, the next, language intercultural. Language is a core element in intercultural communication, as language is closely tied to one's identity, worldview, and positioning. It influences how people from different culture backgrounds interact and perceive one another. Language and culture misunderstandings and identity misalignments can hamper intercultural relations. Language barriers may be mistaken for cultural barriers if one does not have an adequate understanding of linguistic elements and the communication process. To enhance intercultural dialogue, it is vital to have a solid grasp of the linguistic dimension of intercultural communication. Okay, next, intercultural. Doing cultural identities. 1. First, recent years have seen growing use of the term interculturality in public discourse, intercultural learning and education, and other related fields in public discourse. Interculturality derived from the adjective intercultural is used leisurely to refer to interaction and active engagement between different cultural groups and communities. In contrast to multiculturalism, which concerns organic coexistence of cultural groups and communities. In the field of intercultural learn and education, interculturality represents a language and culture learning pedagogy which believes that the goal of language learning is to become intercultural speakers, mediating between different perspectives and cultures rather than to replace one's native language and culture with target ones. And the second, as an emerging research paradigm, interculturality represents a line of investigation that differs from traditions of seeing culture memberships of culture or cultural differences largely, if not always, as something given, static, or as something one either has or does not have. Instead, it problematizes the notions of cultural identities and emphasizes the emergence, discursive, and internature of interaction by examining interactional practices, in particular sequences of thought. Intercultural seeks to interpret how participants make aspects of cultural identities relevant or irrelevant to interaction through interplay of self-orientation and ascription by others and interplay of language use and identities. Okay, the next material why study intercultural communication will be presented by the Kalistari.
Okay, the next material is why study intercultural communication. The first one is the self-awareness imperative. Most important reasons for studying intercultural communication is that it increases our awareness of our own our cultural identity and cultural background, and it helps us avoid ethnocentrism. Second one is demographic changes. The reasons for studying intercultural communication is that shows the great need for face-to-face international communication and the face-to-face international communication and the growing role of global English. The scale of intercultural communication now occurring between speakers who do not speak English as a mother tongue makes traditional studies of intercultural communication that primarily focus on native and non-native speaker communication less relevant, and thus calls for further studies that explore communication between non-native speakers. Okay, the third is workplace and economic globalization. Globalization has brought people from different cultural backgrounds and languages closer to each other, and thus led to increased multilingualism and people learning each other's languages and speaking multiple languages during intercultural communication, and also has made language and cultural diversity a common attribute in most workplaces in today's world, where most daily interactions between people inevitably involve intercultural communication. The emergence of multicultural or multilingual workplaces has further motivated many studies on the need to provide intercultural training for employees and employers. At the same time, individuals who lack such capital will be isolated, which in turn may result in miscommunication or lack of communication between different language groups in the same workplace. Recognizing all these issues, Angori and Milkbauer argue for the need for more comprehensive cross-cultural training for multilingual or multicultural workplaces that also addresses the issue of pragmatic fluency in a language, not just language proficiency. Next is the technological imperative. The advance of the Internet and other communication technologies has tremendous implications for intercultural communication. We will focus on 5 aspects of culture and technology. The first one is increased information about peoples and cultures. The second one is increased contact with people who are different from us. The third is increased contact with people who are similar to us who can provide communities of support. The fourth is identity, culture, and technology, and then differential access to communication technology. The last one is learn adapt to diversity. Diversity can expand our conception of what is possible linguistically, politically, and socially as various lifestyles and ways of thinking converge. The quality of being different to others, meet up with more people who are different, and still be able to communicate effectively have a major impact to peace imperative that will help us work through issues such as racial and religious differences, which is something that most people want to live in peace with each other. Okay, I think that's all our material about language, identity, and intercultural communication, and also why study intercultural communication. We are apologize if we have a mistake. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.